Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, on the way out the door, the Biden administration has massively escalated U.S. involvement in Ukraine, just as we had predicted on a number of occasions.
Yes, and I'm sorry to interrupt, George, but we were among the few that kept to that line, and I feel completely vindicated. No names need to be mentioned here, but we've been proven wrong. Let's just leave it at that.
Exactly. So it started off, Biden announced that they were lifting restrictions on U.S. military contractors working on Ukrainian territory. Then we had the commitment by the Biden administration to build a drone factory in Ukraine using, of course, U.S. taxpayer dollars. Then we had the lifting of the restrictions on the use of the ATACMs missiles on Russian territory. This is the one that Zelensky had been asking for. And then the next day, the lifting the restrictions on the anti-personnel landmines. So this was obviously a major change in policy. And then, of course, Ukraine unhesitatingly launched this attack using the ATACMs. And then the very next day, the British used obviously they always follow the Americans. So the very next day, Ukraine used the British Storm Shadow missiles to launch this attack on Kursk. And then yesterday, we had this strange event. Ukraine said that Russia had launched an ICBM, an intercontinental ballistic missile, on Ukraine, which is kind of very strange. I mean, why would you waste an intercontinental ballistic missile when you're not shooting across the continent? So that was the Ukraine claim. The Americans seemed to be puzzled. The American officials, they said, "We don't understand. We've never seen a missile like this. We don't think it's an ICBM, but it's some very unusual
It was
missile.
powerful.
It's powerful, but it's not an ICBM, so we don't know quite what it is." And then Putin went on television to speak to the Russian people and said, basically, yeah, this is a new type of missile. It's an experimental stage, and we tested it in Ukraine. And just want to go over what he said, because it was a very dramatic situation. Because, if we recall, Putin had said that if you use ATACMs on Russian territory, Ukraine cannot do that. Ukraine just doesn't have the technological knowledge. They don't have the targeting information. This is obviously being done by Americans or British, by NATO. So effectively, it's not Ukraine that's bombing Russian territory, it's NATO that's bombing Russian territory, and obviously we can't really accept that. And so he delivered this address, and it was quite dramatic. So here we have this is the statement, and it says, "I would like to inform the personnel of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, and as well as those who continue to harbor illusions about the possibility of inflicting strategic defeat on Russia, about the events that are taking place today in the zone of the special military operation, namely after the use of long-range weapons of Western manufacture on our territory." And then, continuing the course of the escalating conflict provoked by the West, the United States and its NATO allies have previously announced that they are giving permission for the use of their long-range precision weapon systems on the territory of the Russian Federation. Experts are well aware, and the Russian side has repeatedly emphasized, that it is impossible to use such weapons without the direct participation of military specialists from the countries that produce such weapons. And then he relates, these November the 19th, 6 US-made ATACMs, operational tactical missiles, and on November 21st, during a combined missile attack by the UK-made Storm Shadow and the US-made HIMARS systems, military facilities were struck on the territory of the Russian Federation. So basically, the first one was the Bryansk, and then the second was the Kursk. From that moment on, as we have repeatedly emphasized, the regional conflict in the Ukraine, provoked by the West, acquired elements of a global nature. Our air defense systems repelled these attacks. As a result, the goals of the enemy obviously set for itself were not achieved. And then the fire that broke out at an ammunition depot in the Bryansk region from the falling ATACMs, missile fragments have been extinguished. No casualties or serious damage. In the Kursk region, an attack was carried out on one of our command posts of our North Group. As a result of the attack and anti-aircraft combat, there are unfortunately casualties, deaths and wounded among the personnel of the external security unit of the facility and service. The command and operational personnel of the control point were not injured and are conducting in a routine mode the management of the actions of our troops. And then it goes on, once again, I would like to emphasize that the use of such weapons by the enemy is not capable of influencing the course of our combat operations in the Special Military Operations Zone. And then, in response to the use of the American and British long-range weapons on November the 21st, the Russian armed forces launched a combined strike on one of the facilities of the Ukrainian defense industry. In combat conditions, one of the newest Russian medium-range missile systems was tested, in this case with a ballistic missile in non-nuclear hypersonic equipment. Our missile men call it Oreshnik. The tests were successful. The launch goal was achieved on the territory of Ukraine in the city of Dnipropetrovsk. One of the largest and well-known industrial complexes from the times of the Soviet Union was hit. And then we are developing intermediate and shorter range missiles as a response to US plans to produce and deploy intermediate and shorter range missiles in Europe and the Asia Pacific.
I just interrupt you real quick, George. We are developing intermediate and short range missiles. Yes, because the United States left that treaty. Okay.
Exactly. That's exactly that. And again, it was Donald Trump who presided over that. So, again, he came to power, promising, greatly improved relations, and then Trump kind of walked away from that.
Probably the single really most important arms control agreement we had in Europe. Okay. And the US walked away from it. Russia is responding right now.
Right. Exactly. And one has to say, the INF treaty, the Russians made far more as always, the Russians made far more sacrifices than did the Americans, because the Russians mainly had a land-based missile force. The Americans had much. They had the Triad, and they also had the British and the French, which, after all, the NATO powers. The INF treaty did not cover the British and the French missiles. So it was the Russians really, they made the biggest sacrifices through the INF treaty, and it was the Americans who walked away.
Yeah, and look, as a result, who does Ukraine have to thank? Go ahead.
Right, that's right. And then today, the U.S. not only produces such equipment, but as we see in the course of training its troops, it has worked out issues of transferring its advanced missile systems to different regions of the world, including Europe. Moreover, during exercises, it conducts training on their use. And then let me remind you that Russia voluntarily and unilaterally took upon itself the obligation not to deploy medium and shorter range missiles until American weapons of this kind appear in any region of the world. So again, so he's saying, you've now brought these medium range missiles on the European continent. Look, see, now we've deployed our medium range missile. Let me repeat, we are conducting combat tests of the Oreshnik missile system in response to the aggressive actions of NATO countries against Russia. The issue of further deployment of medium and shorter range missiles will be decided by us, depending on the actions of the United States and its satellites.
For every action, there's an equal reaction, everyone.
Exactly.
That's why the arms control agreements were popular because they worked.
That's
Okay.
right. That's right. And now comes the killer punch. The targets for destruction during further tests of our newest missile systems will be determined by us based on the threats to the security of the Russian Federation. We consider ourselves entitled to use our weapons against military facilities of those countries that allow their weapons to be used against our facilities. Repeat that again. We consider ourselves entitled to use our weapons against military facilities of those countries that allow their weapons to be used against our facilities, which means NATO territory is,
Right.
we're going to target them.
Well, what just opened up in Poland?
Exactly. That's exactly. They built an air defense system, a strategic air defense system, and in fact, Zaharova said, "Well, that really endangers our strategic situation, and therefore, yeah, that's a legitimate target. That would be a legitimate target for us." So there, he says there, don't give us this crap that NATO is not a party to the conflict. No, if you are allowing your weapons to be used against us, you are a party to the conflict, and
With
therefore
your
you're
own
a legitimate
technicians,
target.
with your own technicians pushing the button.
That's right. So that was a very serious statement. And allow the weapon to be used against officer. In the event of an escalation of aggressive actions, we will respond just as decisively and in kind. I recommend that the ruling elites of those countries that are hatching plans to use their military contingents against Russia seriously think about this. And then, of course, when choosing, if necessary, and as a response, targets for destruction by systems such as Oreshnik on the territory of Ukraine, we will offer in advance to civilians and also ask citizens of friendly states located there to leave the dangerous zones. We will do this for humanitarian reasons, openly, publicly, without fear of counteraction from the enemy, who will also receive this information. Because, and he explains why without fear? Because there are currently no means of counteracting such weapons. The missiles attack targets at speed of 10 Machs, that is 2.5 to 3 kilometers per second. The modern air defense systems in the world and the missile defense system created by the Americans in Europe do not intercept such missiles. So we're going to give you a warning in advance because your air defense systems are just not going to work. And again, I would like to emphasize once again that it was not Russia, but the United States that destroyed the international security system and so on. So this on top of the updated nuclear doctrine, which Putin signed also a couple of days ago, would seem to indicate that Russia is now quite serious and is making clear that we're just not going to accept the idea that you're going to bomb our country. I mean, it cannot be. The Western media haven't really picked up on this. They're not.
Yeah, that's the most important takeaway here. I mean, this is all public knowledge. As usual, George does an excellent forensic job. But I've been looking at Western reaction to it, and they really don't know what to make of
No.
it. Okay, and we can ponder why, because this is serious stuff. I
Right.
mean, and it's very complete. It's not bombastic. It's
Mm-hmm.
very matter of fact and language that anybody can understand. So it's kind of, make my day moment. I mean,
Right.
you want to go down this path, it's your craven choice.
Right, sir. But that's the thing that he's saying that you're not going to do this. We're not going to tolerate this. And this idea that we're bluffing, well, I just showed you, we use this missile. It's a new missile. You don't have the means of stopping it. and we're not bluffing. So the point is that the West, it simply doesn't have a second act. I mean, it's all based on the assumption that Russia's bluffing. It's like, I mean, and well, what are you going to do if they're not bluffing? And they said they just then go on into Putin this and Putin that, but they don't have, because ultimately they have acted recklessly for now almost 3 years, with increasing recklessness, and on the assumption that they can just go on doing it as if
Well,
Russia.
all the more so, George. I mean, and this is the question you and I ask every time we talk about it. How does this benefit
No,
Ukraine?
it doesn't better. But an even more salient issue is, well, how does it benefit you? You have got yourself now into, I know they get these couple, sometimes, you watch CNN and they bring on these experts, and then they talk about, well, Putin may rattle his nuclear sabers, but we have nuclear missiles of our own. Okay, you have nuclear missiles of your own. you know how do you then decide that you're ready to launch a nuclear war on behalf of Ukraine? When did that decision arise? Because no president in the past has ever said that this Ukraine, or really any country in Eastern Europe, is of such vital importance to the United States or to the West that it's worth destroying the planet for. So just to say, well, Putin can rattle his nuclear weapons, but we've got nuclear weapons of our own. So you're ready to launch a nuclear war for Ukraine. Well,
but Putin cannot be allowed to win. Well, did you think about that when you started all this?
right.
Did you really think about it? They didn't.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And that's why this whole conflict has been a catastrophe, one after another, for NATO, because they thought that they could bluff their way into inflicting a strategic defeat on Russia
Right.
without firing a shot.
Right.
Well, whoever was advising you,
right.
these people, we've seen this time and again. The Iraq war will pay for itself. It'll be a walk in the park.
Right.
We've seen this over and over again. I don't know, Judge, you see the video of that hypersonic missile hitting?
Yes. Yeah.
That was pretty impressive, pretty scary.
Right. And it has those MIRVs, the multiple independently targeted re-entry vehicles, which means that you have a missile, but it has a number of rockets. So boom, it's almost impossible for any air defense system to counter it, because it just fires off so many missiles. So that's a serious stuff. That was always the issue with the ICBMs.
And even for the war boosters for this, the number of British missiles, ATACMs, HIMARS, all these acronyms we've learned recently, they don't have an unlimited supply of these things.
Right.
Okay, you're firing at North Koreans. Everybody, there is no evidence been presented that is even true.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
This is absurd what is going on here. As George and I pointed out, well, so what if North Korean troops are in Russia? What business is that of NATO?
Exactly.
Okay. Is it threatening NATO? Okay. It's absurd. Okay. And are they inviting for they obviously want to escalate. Well, Russia met your escalation, so it's in your court now. Right. Are you going to go there? Now, we all know that this is just to trip up Donald Trump, okay?
But this,
it certainly doesn't benefit Ukraine.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't benefit Ukraine. But at the same time, it's kind of interesting, because if they continue with this escalation, then the question of peace, Trump's peace plan or whatever, becomes moot, because Biden has 2 months. I mean, that's a long time. He's got 2 months left before Trump takes over. You can do a lot of damage in 2 months. You could well start a shooting war in Europe. I mean, if you continue with that, Putin's now made a clear warning. I mean, Putin is not going to wait around. Oh well, I'm going to wait till Trump comes in. That's 2 months down the road. You can't wait for that.
And plus, it's something I've tried to impress upon people. is the Russians have their own timetable. They're, the November 5th and then, January 20th. That doesn't play into their calculus really at all. Okay. It's on the calendar, but it doesn't really influence them. And so, are we going to wait for Trump to come into power? Well, Trump worse than U.S.-Russian relations, worse than Obama. Okay. So, I mean, they already know who he is.
That's right. That's exactly right. And that's why I think it's quite striking that Trump has said nothing. He's the president. He's the president-elect. He just won a mandate. You ran on a platform of no more wars, bringing wars to an end, and you don't have anything to say.
Where is in social? I guess he's back on Twitter. Where is the message? I won an unprecedented shellacking of your party and your party's policies.
Right.
What the hell are you doing?
Right, exactly.
Okay, and he should do it not as a point of sending a message to Russia or having J.D. Vance call the Russian ambassador. No, that would be Logan Act stuff. Don't do that. But say it publicly. Right. Joe Biden, what the hell are you doing? You have been overwhelmingly rejected.
That's right.
And your policies. Right. You need to explain to the American people why you are doing this.
That's exactly right. That's absolutely right. He won. Biden lost. Biden lost. Harris lost. The Democratic Party lost. There was a clear mandate saying we don't want this war and we don't want all this money being wasted on Ukraine, and particularly Trump had said no World War III. We're not going to have World War III. Trump hasn't said anything. Now, where are the Republicans? I mean, if I were a Republican, I would now move to impeach Biden and say Biden is now completely out of control. He's endangering the security of the United States. He's obviously non-compos mentis. We're in a very dangerous situation. He needs to be removed from office. I mean, they should have invoked the 25th Amendment, but Congress can't do that. Republicans should just simply, we're going to move to impeach. I mean, that's it. He needs to be removed from power. And let the Democrats then support Biden, who's leading the country into World War III. So fine, go ahead, vote for him. Vote for this person who's endangering America in this way.
Absolutely. And also, it's really it's remarkable when you look at Putin's speech, which is publicly made. It's easy to find. Okay, and you can agree or disagree with it. But there were casualties during the strike on Russia. Okay, there was a lot of transparency right there. I look at all of these Western media outlets. All they do is repeat Ukraine's talking points that are written for them in London and Brussels and Washington. Okay. I mean, the number of missiles Ukraine has shot down, it's just an extraordinary, astronomical number of missiles have been shot down. But all Russian missiles are shot down all the time. It's really amazing. It's absurd the way they write about it.
Right.
And so, what we need to do is the Republican Party and MAGA, where are you?
Right.
Demand that your leader step up. Right. Okay, because he's not stepping up. George,
he's not stepping up. You have the votes. You have the majority in the House. You have to move to impeach. And no ands, ifs, and buts. This is if ever there was grounds for impeachment, then this is it. He lost an election. He, even worse than that, he was bundled aside by his own party. They had so little confidence in him. But his anointed candidate was overwhelmingly rejected. And now, you're making decisions, of enormous consequence for America, Europe, the entire planet. And because he has no business doing so. Joe, remove him. He needs to be removed from power. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's like what? So what the hell are you doing? What the hell is Mike Johnson doing? I mean, so I just find it quite extraordinary. So if Biden continues with this, then I think Russia will attack some NATO territory. I think he's made this clear. I think he's going to attack NATO territory.
You and I, George, we said this all the way back in February 2022. I remember distinctly saying Article 5 is going to be tested before this is all out.
Right.
And you know what, everybody? We're here.
Right.
We're here. And you know why I know that? Because George and I have been watching Russian politics, with the end of the Yeltsin regime and the advent of the Putin presidency. What does Putin want? What does Putin think? And this is all a ridiculous exercise. He just told you,
right.
Matter of factly,
right.
Without ideology, without bombast,
right.
Look, not banging his shoe on the table. Okay, it just said an easy translation from Russian into English. This is exactly what they're going to do. What are you going to do in response?
That's right.
You say the Russians are always escalating. No, you are.
That's right. That's exactly right. So it'd be kind of interesting. What would be the first target? My guess would be Britain. I think he would hit the British Isles because he pointed out it's a storm shadow, and the storm shadow led to the deaths of Russians. So since he's saying we essentially regard you as a legitimate target, he would probably hit some maybe air bases on the British Isles, and then he would leave it to the British, and the British then can go to NATO and say, hey, Article 5. And let's see what the response is among NATO member states. So whether they're really ready after all the big talk. Whether are you really ready to go to war with Russia? Having provoked this action, in this way, having been warned clearly, don't do this. If you do this, this is how we respond. And after all that, and the British are going to go and invoke Article 5. I don't know how many takers they're going to be.
Interesting that you say that, because when you said that, my first reaction was, whoa. But have you been reading, everyone, the mainstream media about the condition of the British military? You can't go a day without, how many more ships are they going to decommission? They're decommissioning helicopters now, okay? I mean, George is onto something here, because they've shown their own. They talk a big game. They talk a huge game, okay? But you don't really look. There's a stadium across the street from me. The entire British military couldn't fill it now, okay? One stadium, football stadium.
Right. Yep. No,
that's a big game. Talk a big game. Go ahead.
Exactly. You talk a big game. All because of your connection with the Americans, and now you're behind this launching, and they've been the most aggressive. They've been the most belligerent, really, from the start. From who was it? It was Boris Johnson, and then it was Liz Truss, then Sunak. Now it's Starmer. We've had so many of these prime ministers. They're all one's more bellicose than the other. But they're fine. What are you going to do when suddenly, your air base has been knocked out? Try going to NATO and invoking Article 5. We know Hungary is going to say no. I think we know Slovakia is going to say. I think a lot of countries are going to say no. I think, hey, we really shouldn't have provoked Russia in this way.
They might say, what they most probably would say, start negotiations now. Come on, let's stop this.
That's right. Yeah.
Because you know why? Because that's the most rational thing to do.
It's the most, yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. The whole, and this is what you were right about when you said this assumption. Trump, Putin's not going to do anything. He's waiting for Trump. He's going to say, because maybe he's going to. No, they already know about Trump. They had 4 years of Trump. They saw Trump really didn't do anything. I mean,
how much did American foreign policy change under Trump?
They didn't.
It didn't.
It didn't. To this day, Trump boasts that he lifted the restrictions on sending lethal weapons to Ukraine. He said, "Oh yeah, we sent all these javelins to Ukraine." So he didn't do anything. This notion that you come out, we're going to wait for Trump, and Trump's going to do this, Trump's going to do that. He's not going to do that. Again, it's a lot of big talk. But he didn't do any of the things that he promised that he was going to do. And given the team that he's put together, again, you just look at the people he's put together, where are the contrary voices? Where are the voices who would be telling Trump, hey, this needs to be brought to an end? They're not there. This is a very hawkish, neoconservative team that he's put together. So far, I haven't seen anyone, I mean, we have Tulsi, but Tulsi is not in charge of any government agency.
And I doubt she will be.
I doubt exactly. It's very, very
Well,
questionable
George,
to
but
even make it.
let's broaden it out. I mean, who said uncle first? Well, it was Sergeant Schultz, okay? And that's where we are right now, okay? And then the British and the Americans, they escalate. And you got to wonder what they're thinking in Berlin. I mean, didn't you guys notice that we have to open up a conversation? This Russophobia and this hate baiting, it's not working. It's not, and the public isn't going along with it. Okay. And oh, by the way, everyone, the country, Germany, is being deindustrialized by this. And Putin said, well, we still got one pipeline. I mean, maybe we should talk. Okay. These are all cumulative things right now. And so some people in Whitehall and the White House want to escalate when people are beginning to realize this is a breaking point. Okay.
Right.
Because the more the British and the Americans escalate, the less likely the Russians will negotiate at all.
That's right.
Why would they?
No, I think, and that's right. I think, and that's why, even waiting for 2 months is just quite pointless. I mean, this is, you have these completely demented figures in Washington and obviously in London. The people in Washington, this is their project, Ukraine project. They want to see this through, and ultimately, you have to think Biden is a very old man. He's what 81 or 82. He really barely knows, what's what.
And he's an old 81.
Exactly, an old 81. So he doesn't really have that many more months really left to live. So essentially, he's the one who's making these reckless decisions about the future of America, about the future of the planet. A man who basically really, maybe has another year to live, but it doesn't look like it, just, looking at him. So you're allowing this person to make these sorts of decisions. I mean, it's
Well, I think it's far more nefarious than that. Is that officially Joe Biden signed off on it, but who are the people that pushed them? Because they're all younger. They will come. They will maybe fight for another day. But no, it was the president. It was Biden's fault. The guy, they backstab him and they're gonna dump this on.
Right.
Man, what is a definition of Democrat with a small d? I'm sorry, with a large D, democratic friendship? I mean, there's an enormous. This is like the Tory party in Britain. Right. Everybody's backstabbing everybody.
Right. But then the question is, though the people who are making the decision, maybe it's Blinken who's making the decision. What is it that they expect? I mean, they think that Putin is going to back down, that the Russians are going to back down, because it's very strange. Like, what is your expectation? You think that he's bluffing? Well, that's a very dangerous game to play. That a nuclear power is bluffing. I mean, it's kind of a very, very weird way of looking at it. And you say, I mean, who's making the decision? I think Blinken and Sullivan. You're right. I mean, they're certainly younger than Biden. In which case, it becomes even more bizarre as to what it is that they're hoping to achieve by this. I mean, clearly, some of them have a real pathological hatred for Russia. Yeah. Some of them are definitely want to ensure that Trump will fail. And we'll have an absolute disaster on his hands, and this is all going to be on Trump. It'll be his fault. But even so, it's an amazingly dangerous game that they're
very brazen to, because it's something that you and I have commented before on, is that Trump walks in this it's his first day in office is a quagmire. Right. You have Palestine, Israel, you have Ukraine. What will happen to Trump's domestic agenda? Right. See, this is part of sabotaging him at home as well. Okay.
Yeah.
All of this is about destroying the Trump presidency even before it starts. Okay.
Right. Yes.
And it'll depending on how it plays out, George, is that Trump may enter office in negative territory. I mean, this 2 months is a long time.
Exactly. That's
In
why
negative territory.
that's right. That's why the whole thing is so dangerous, because 2 months, look what they've just done in the last few days. They can get two more months of this, and basically try to destroy the Trump presidency long before he comes into office. I mean, they obviously they did that in 2016, 2017, but they're doing the same thing now, and that's
Well,
why
that was character assassination.
that was
Okay,
character
it was
assassination.
World
But
War III. They've kind
that's
of
right, it
up. Okay.
was character assassination. But essentially, they tied his hands by with the expulsion of the Russian diplomats and the closing the Russian diplomatic compounds. So that was all done very very cleverly, very craftily, to ensure that really Trump's hands are already tied when it comes to improving relations with Russia. But now his hands are going to be tied if he enters into a situation where there's actually war on the European continent.
There
Because
is
once the
there
moment there's
is
war,
see, there is war.
there is war, but a direct shooting
War
war.
is happening right now.
Right.
Russia, Ukraine is at war with Russia. Okay, everybody, it's these things. George and I have talked about it before. Like if you look at the history of World War II, in June 1944, in hindsight, oh yeah, the war was winding down. If you were alive in June 1944, you didn't know how it was going to come out. Okay, and so that's one of the problems we have right now is that we don't want to start World War III. No, we are in World War III, everyone.
Right.
We're
But
in
so
it.
far, that's right. But so far, there hasn't been direct shooting between the NATO powers and Russia, and that's why what Putin said on Thursday was essentially, we will absolutely regard countries that provide weapons to be used against us on our territory. We regard those countries as legitimate targets. So NATO can say we're not a party to the conflict. You can go on repeating that. We don't regard you. We do regard you now as parties to the conflict and hence legitimate targets. So just because you say that you're not a party to the conflict, we don't accept that.
I wonder, I don't know where this new missile was fired from. I wonder how many minutes it would take to get to the UK, because they wouldn't even see it
I don't
coming.
think it wouldn't be very long. It would be quite quick. And I think they'd give a warning to make sure that there are no civilian casualties. But boom, that will be done, and then the British can then explain themselves, and Starmer can try to explain himself to the British people. Not just we've been attacked. You've got to explain to the British people, why have you led this country into this impasse, into this horrific situation. This is the problem, that the NATO countries have been getting a free ride for nearly 3 years. They haven't really suffered any consequences. Now, once they start suffering consequences, the governments are going to have to explain themselves to the people as to why they put their nations into such jeopardy.
I try to stave off evil thoughts because it really is bad for your psyche. But if an air base in the UK were hit, I wonder what the tone of the Baltic Chihuahuas would be. I wonder what they would say.
Yeah.
Maybe they wouldn't say anything at all. Because, hey, baby, it's real.
Yeah.
It's real. You guys bark.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
The war is real.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the problem. That's the problem with the miniatures in NATO. They can go spouting off all they want, okay? And a dog in the backyard at night, okay, just annoying everyone, okay?
Yeah.
But that will probably sober them up a bit, okay?
Yeah.
Some of that cold night air, sharpen your wits.
That's right. And really, if this attack on the airbase and Starmer goes on television and said, we are now at war, with Russia. I don't think the British people are going to rally around. I don't think you're going to say this is 1940 again, the Blitz, the good old days, facing Hitler. I don't think that's how the British are going to respond to Keir Starmer.
George is absolutely right. And, it's part of popular culture. It's the Netflix thing. I mean, they had a Netflix special on Munich. I watched probably like 20 minutes of it and turned it off because it was garbage. The Churchill speech. Everyone, that was one single moment in time.
Right.
It will not happen again.
Right.
It makes you feel good. But war is, ask the people that experienced the Blitz. I mean, and I don't think they'll say that was a great time. No, it wasn't. It was a horrific time. The last time I was in London, I was being taken around and I said, what is this building doing here? It doesn't fit with the other one. It was hit during the Blitz, and that's how they rebuilt it, but it was like 10 years more modern. It kind of
that's right. So, but that's the thing. You see, if Starmer, says, "Oh, we're under attack," I think the British people are going to say, "Yeah, but we kind of provoked this. We've been doing this for almost 3 years, and plenty of people were warning and saying this is not a sensible policy. This really doesn't make a lot of sense to provoke Russia in this way." And then finally, when Russia is provoked and reacts, now you're calling for a mobilization of the country.
Well, all the more so,
go and join the army, to fight for your stupid war.
Well, as the British military continues to shrink at a rapid pace, but go through go to the tabloid media, how proud they are of their missiles hitting Russia. Okay. Are they going to scrub those articles? Because they're beating their chest right now. They're fighting the Ruskies, right? Well, what happens if the Ruskies fight back?
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah.
Well, you going to scrub all those pages?
Yeah.
You going to scrub all the nonsense ex-military today contractors commentary on the BBC, on Sky? You want a wide reach. People already have that message. Well, British missiles used against Russia. Well, Russian missiles will be used against Britain. How do you like them apples?
Yeah, that's right. No, no. The British people, they want to focus on their football. They really, really don't want to get called up and start training to get themselves into shape and to become a fighting British army.
All the more so. What happens to Ukrainian soldiers fighting in Ukraine?
Yeah.
Meat grinder.
Yeah.
Meat. Yeah. All right. George and I tried to rationally try to understand this and understand what Putin's message to the Russian people and to the world, because it's easily accessible. You can't, if you're interested in these things, you can't say you didn't know. Yeah. You can't say that there is a logic, and a very unpleasant one at that, is in play right now.
Right.
So there's something out there that is driving us towards catastrophe.
Yeah.
And the people that are driving this need to be called out. George and I are just, a podcast, okay? But if you see this, just pass it on, okay?
That's right. Exactly.
Because you're not going to get it in the mainstream media.
No.
Oh, Putin's thing, blah, blah. He's saber rattling and all that. All this is all nonsense. Right. It's not reading the room.
That's right. Yeah. No, that's right. And that's why the Western media are playing this down because they don't know how to respond to this. So because they've been telling us how that we can just do this, we can do whatever we feel like it. They're just bluffing and so on.
Well, George, for some reason, I don't know how, somebody put me on the Foreign Policy, that magazine, Foreign Policy.
Yeah.
They put me on their mailing list, and these people are, what kind of people they are. You can't delete it. You can't. Don't send this to me anymore. There's no link. I can't find it. Lead article yesterday. Russia's war machine grinding to the ground, something like that. So this is what they're telling people.
Yeah. That's right.
None of them have been right. Anyway, we could go on. will go on, but not now. Okay, this is Peter. This is the Gaggle with Peter and George. We're on Locals, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com. This is Friday. We'll have a mega wrap on Sunday, as we're wont to do. And then we did a diagnostic. We should have the live stream back in order on Monday.
Monday. Well, exactly. Monday, 10 a.m. Eastern time. And then I do my solo on Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern time. And then please think about these savage hounds who are getting increasingly angry about the lack of any movement in the tip jar. You know, they're saying, "Hey, we're not bluffing." You know, we don't bluff. So if you have a few bob in your pocket or behind the sofa cushion, whip them out, dunk them in the tip jar. That might calm them down for a little while. We're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve on the technology. And above all, we get dogs that are reasonably even-tempered for the time being. So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, subscribe. See you soon. Bye-bye.